Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for another MitID webinar. The webinar is scheduled for 30 minutes and will be recorded and shared with you afterwards. So if you have your coffee or tea ready, then I will introduce you to today's panelists. VP Product Manager Lars Møller Christensen is with us again, and let's just do a final check to see if there's a live connection to the office. Good morning, Lars.
Good morning.
And from Norway, where the sun always shines, another aha experience, MitID Onboarding Manager Helge Lund Kolsted joins us once again. Good morning to you, Helge.
Good morning.
And my name is Henrik Hansen. I am pre-sales consultant to the Danish sales team and have the pleasure of moderating this morning's webinar. Following our disclaimer, let's take a look at what we will go through today. So, in a few minutes, Lars will give you an update of the pilot production phase and also share with you how a nationwide campaign will inform all Danes and abroad about what is about to happen, when it happens, and how it happens. I will take you through an actual process of how you get your MitID and link it to the new MitID app. Helge will share the latest migration updates, and at the end, as always, we will try to answer any incoming questions that you may raise during the webinar. You can always hit the Q&A button in the panel of your screen, and we will address them at the end. National electronic EIDs is a serious business, and MitID for sure is no exception. MitID is even governed by law, and the whole infrastructure must follow very strict guidelines, not only when it comes to security, but also to UX design, etc. Signicat has just been through the certification process, and we are now very proud to have achieved the status of being a certified MitID broker, and look forward to taking you to the next step. And being a MitID certified broker actually ties in very nicely with our purpose and mission statement, which of course is that we want to build a trusted digital world for us all. We've been doing that since 2007, and we are not even limited to one specific country. In fact, we are represented with 250 specialists that are omnipresent across Europe. And today, of course, we will focus mainly on Denmark, since that is where the hotcakes are at the moment. The MitID pilot phase that already now runs in production is upon us. And to tell us more about that, I will hand over to Lars for his first session today.
Thank you, Henrik. Yeah, we have some information to share with you on both the pilot and the communication material that is relevant for the phase MitID is entering. First of all, MitID is in pilot production. A big thumbs up. It's not very common that such a large-scale infrastructure project actually is on time. Or almost on time. May 6th, the date we have been announcing for maybe a year or so, was kept. So MitID went into production, in pilot production. So that's was very interesting day. This means that all brokers and registration authorities, support organizations, they are gradually being onboarded to the production system. There's a special process for that. Again, very strict security reasons for not letting everybody getting access to the infrastructure. So there's a bootstrap process where an approved MitID broker or registration authority administrator is onboarded and can take the integration to the production system on behalf of the organization. And that typically happens when you migrate from MitID to MitID, and Henrik will show that later on. So the brokers, and by that also the service providers, are now being onboarded into the MitID production system. And the end users, the pilot end users are also gradually being onboarded or migrated from NemID to MitID via the online flow or the NetBank flow. And there is one comment that we will make you aware of, that you need NemID with CPR to migrate to MitID. If you don't have that, you cannot migrate online as it is right now in the pilot phase. But we'll get back to that. So take the next one, Henrik. So if you want to be part of the pilot as a service provider, as we have mentioned a couple of times, you just let us know. We will arrange to involve you or onboard you to the pilot part here. We have on our developer pages a section about the pilot phase, and here you see 4 operational models, and especially the last one, number 3 and 4, which is relevant if you want to become part of the pilot. Either you have to enable the production environment and get MitID pilot end users. We can help you or assist you in getting up to 3 pilot end users. That's operation model 3, and if you want model 4, you can also be part of the ecosystem, the pilot ecosystem, sharing your MitID flow with the rest of the 7,500 pilot users. But let us know if you're interested in that. The next one, Henrik. If you want to be part of the pilot and you want these 3 pilot end users, this is real MitID production identities. There are some documents, forms you have to fill in. You have to be enabled in iOS or Google Play in order for you to access the MitID app. We also need to IP whitelisting your IP address in order for you to get access to the different services you need. And that part, the lower part for the end users, the support are handled directly from the MitID setup and not from us as a broker. We will handle the service provider part. Next one. So I mentioned this, you have to have NemID with CPR if you want to migrate to MitID, and you want to have a MitID pilot end user identity. So one way to find out if you have a NemID with CPR is that you go into nemid.now, under selvbetjening, and under NemID, you will have to look for a small red dot below your address. You can see the example here on this slide. If there's a red dot below your address, then you do not have NemID with CPR and you cannot migrate online. So look for a colleague or another NemID user that doesn't have the red dot, and they can be migrated to MitID after all the forms have been filled in and so on. Yeah, take the next one. Another milestone is the MitID is actually now part of Danish law text. On April 27th, MitID got its own law in the government. And you can see the link to the text, the law text here. And there are especially 2 areas for service providers that are interesting to pay attention to. The next one, Henrik. That's number 13 and number 21, paragraph 13 and 21. Number 13 is the personal information, the GDPR stuff, the processing of personal information, which actually now has been stated by law that this is in the MitID ecosystem is defined and not relying on a special data processor agreement, but with reference to the law. So in our privacy policy, we have reference to the law text that states that we are, as a broker, are allowed to handle or process and control also personal information. Another one for you as service provider is the liability, which is stated here in the law text, that is Digitaliseringsstyrelsen that are liable for any claims that may arrive due to wrong identity handling or processing. So just a tip for you to look into and understand this in full detail. Next one. Yeah, so let's look at some of the things that are going to happen the rest of the year and beginning next year in terms of getting all Danes part of this. We have received this MitID communication material that we are going to share with you on our developer pages. There will be a link to what we call a service provider communication package. You see the content to the right here. There are some logo illustrations and so on, and some PDF that describes and recommends what you should or what you could use in terms of sharing with your end users on your websites information about MitID. One important thing here is that the program behind MitID really recommends that we, all of us, do not communicate this as MitID will replace NemID, so that end users will sort of believe that they can just terminate their NemID when they have gotten their MitID. It is in a sense the idea or the goal that you have to keep your NemID in order for you to use the services that still uses NemID. But more on that in the package. Next one, Henrik. So there's a timeline from Digitaliseringsstyrelsen. They have set up a communication plan with 2 campaigns initiated starting second half this year, which means more or less the same time as when the mass migration begins. Next one, Henrik. So very detailed with segmentation on age and on medias and yeah, different things. So when you look into this, you could put your own activities, or you can schedule your own activities in line with what you see here. Yeah, that's something that we are going to share now. I think that was this is the last one. So the branding guidelines, this is just one of the slides or one of the pages in the document. They recommend again that always do on the left side and don't do on the right hand side, so that everybody is on the same page here. Yeah, I think that was the last slide from my part, except from this one, which is the important milestones, and they still are. May 6 we went into pilots. August 16 is the mass migration. So basically, for you as service provider, there's still some room, plenty of room to get into production. Since May 6, it has not been the best experience in terms of operation. There are some hot fixes and some processes that needs to be well aligned. So don't feel that you have missed something. I think it's very fine that we have these couple of weeks where we get everything fully in place in order for you to go into production. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Lars. And as Lars just mentioned, not only will there be campaigns, but I have got the pleasure of just taking you through how to actually get your personal MitID and how to use it. So being a pilot user and already in production, I have chosen to share my own onboarding process with you. I won't spend too much time on it and just go through the various screens that your end users, and for that matter yourself at some point, will go through. So it ties in nicely with the information campaign that the NemID becomes MitID. The process for creating MitID is next in line. And the process is supported by NemID verification. And again, with relation to what Lars just mentioned, if you have a red dot, then you cannot do this online at the moment. But once you are ready and have all your authentication devices, i.e. your mobile phone and your email ready, then you're actually ready to proceed and start the actual process. So for this purpose, I've chosen the MitID app, and we'll take you through that at the end of my little session here. I have created a user ID, and that basically is much the same process as when you sign up with a mobile phone provider. So once I was ready, there were some terms and conditions that I had to read and accept, give the possibility of downloading them as well for those who want to keep them on their own records, so to speak. And then I entered a phone number to get a confirmation code. And once that confirmation code was entered, I could proceed. Then I could link my email account also to my user ID later on, because that actually serves as a notification purpose. So once again, another code sent to my phone, this time not as a text message, but as an email. Enter that and continue. And then it was my turn to select a user ID. Now, those of you who already today have a NemID with a Danish CPR number as your user ID will definitely have to choose something new. The rest of you might be able to continue, but of course it's kind of like a first come, first served base, and with approximately 45,000 Danes being migrated on a daily basis from mid-August, obviously you cannot guarantee that the more simple usernames are available. But the guidelines to how to pick your user ID is on the screen. You have a validate button to check if it's actually available. And once that shows up in green, you are ready to proceed, because now you actually have a unique user ID. And that unique user ID will then be issued with an activation code and even a QR code that you can use to bootstrap your MitID app. And that process I've actually also just chosen to show you here. So now that I had my MitID and I had downloaded the app by special invitation at this moment, then I opened the app and clicked on the create new user account, read the welcome and a few details in here, entering a user ID and the activation code that was presented on the other screen you saw just before. After that, your device will receive a new 8-digit confirmation code that you have to key in, and then basically you are done. That process is very similar to NemID today, and I think that's by design and desires actually. But the MitID app actually holds a new nice feature that especially families can make use of, because it's actually possible in a MitID app, whether it's on a phone or a tablet, to create multiple users that can each have their own account registered. It does, however, limit the use of biometry as authentication method, but with the PIN code you still get the same app, and yeah, you only have to have one MitID app for the entire family. So if you've downloaded the app, you have created the MitID user ID, and you have linked everything to your phone, then how does it actually look? Yeah, for that purpose, I have recorded an authentication flow example, and as you can see, I've also pasted in my mobile to show what this actually looks like in unison. So I went to our Connect website, chose the MitID option, and that opens up for our login procedure. Pressed my user ID, and no, this is not the real one, that I could choose to have remembered by the merchant, so I don't have to enter it every single time. This sends the authentication requests to my mobile phone, where I could use my Face ID to approve the login procedure. And after that is approved, I then have the possibility of entering my social security number so that the merchant can recognize that along with the UUID that he or she gets in the response, and can then basically forever tie me up to the user ID and know exactly who they are dealing with. For the demo purposes, I'm not allowed to show you the actual response page, but anybody who has such interests can, of course, always just reach out to me at the end of the presentation. The contact details are available there. Now, I mentioned that you could have multiple authenticators, and some of them are shown here. Probably the most crucial moment here is the discovery that the one-time password code card will not be continued with MitID. We've mentioned that in the previous webinars as well, but I think this is a very visual representation that it really isn't there. But these different authenticators, they offer different level of assurance for various procedures. And here you can see the combinations that can be used, or what you can achieve with a standalone. If also you want more details about that, feel free to reach out to us at any point in time, and we are, of course, available to help you on that. And I think that concludes what I wanted to show you today. So now it's Helge for customer migration updates.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, I'm not going to say a whole lot because we want to have some time for questions, but I'm going to say something about request signing. For those now panicking, please calm down. This is not required for everything. It's required for a certain number of add-ons, and also if you want to change the already configured requested attributes. Specifically, it's required if you want to specify the assurance level and method on the fly, if you want to switch on PSD2 mode on the fly. It's required for transaction consent, and if you want to provide a service provider reference. This is an opaque string that can be provided with requests, and that you'll also receive in the response. Next slide, please. The following do not require request signing. If you want to pre-fill the CPR number for the user, if you want to pre-fill the UUID or the unique ID in MitID, that also does not require request signing. And also, if you have purchased the Step Up add-on, the auth token ID does not require request signing. So what does request signing mean? It means different things depending on which protocol you're using. For SAML 2.0, it simply means that you set up in your identity and access management system that you want to sign the requests, and the metadata already contains the correct certificates to do so. For OpenID Connect, it's a bit more fiddly, but and specifically it means that you have to provide a Java web key for signing to us, and we can set it up on our end. A detailed description on how to do so is provided on the developer web. Go to developer.signicat.com/enterprise. Click on About OpenID Connect and open the topic MitID Specifics Signing Authorization Requests. It contains quite a lot of information, including code examples. The second thing I was going to talk about today. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, is the Signicat customer community, which by now is seeing some traction. This is a place to interact with other customers and also Signicat staff. We have a whole section on MitID where we post relevant things, and also any relevant questions from webinars are posted in the questions and answers section for you to see. I highly recommend using the Signicat customer community extensively throughout the implementation period, because it does contain rather a lot of relevant information for you. All right, let's now go to a poll. I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer this. Obviously, most of you now know that Signicat has a customer community, but I'd like you to answer as if you as the situation was before this presentation. All right, do we believe that's enough time?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much, Helge.
Thank you.
So, questions and answers. And Lars, you are the man with the overview.
Yes. I'm just looking here in the Q&A panel. There's one question here on if there's any during the summer holidays, if there's any, it's not possible to go into production during the summer holiday. It's over the summer period that we are doing this. So I think the concern is whether there's any not possible to get into production during the summer holidays. I don't know, Helge, if you could elaborate on that. Are we on duty all summer?
We are on duty all summer, although we might have reduced staffing, especially in July. But it is absolutely possible to go into production during the summer, especially if you give us enough notice.
Yeah.
Yes. There's not much activity here in the Q&A.
No, but it is our 11th webinar on MitID, so
it is
potentially all questions could already be answered. But if I can just say that if anybody does have any questions or actually have the need for more information, then the links that we provide here can be a way in. Otherwise, of course, do feel free to reach out to us if you do have anything. Yeah, I think if you are still in doubt how to get there into production, go to our webpage, fill in the migration form, and we will get in contact with you to find out how we get you from NemID to MitID. And yeah, then we'll just take it from there. So I think from all of us here at Signicat, especially Helge and Lars, thanks for joining us again this morning, and thank you for everyone joining us and spending your time with us. This webinar has been recorded. It will be shared with you as soon as it's ready, and will also be posted onto our resource page and YouTube channel, where you can find the previous webinars as well that can maybe cast some light on any outstanding issues that you might be battling with. And otherwise, feel free to reach out to us. We are here and ready for you. So on behalf of everyone, thanks very much for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.